Okay, welcome to 8.4, which will be talking about subtracting real numbers. In our previous section, 8.3, we're adding real numbers, but now we're going to subtract real numbers. So 8 minus 10. So you could say, okay, 8 minus 10. Previously I said, okay, you can go ahead and, okay, let's make the 10 positive, the 8 negative, subtract them, you get 2. But then I'm switching my sign, so that means it's negative. So your first answer is negative 2. Now straight up, 10. What's 10 minus 8? Well, this one we actually know, which would be 2. Now, my next example, number 3, negative 8 minus a 10, we treat the 10 as a negative. So in the past, I will have answers as 2, negative 2, 18, or negative 18. And I always hear, well, don't two negatives make a positive? That only works in multiplying division, and this is not a multiplying division problem. This is an addition and subtraction type problem. So what we do is we do this, we stack it. Negative 8, negative 10, and just like in our other section, adding real numbers, I've got 2 negatives, so I know my answer is negative. So if you owe me 8 and owe me 10, you owe me 18. We can do the same thing with decimals as well. We spent, in our section number 4, we were talking about decimals. So now, I've got this negative 2.5, but let's look at this. Right here, we could treat that as a negative 1. So if you multiply this, this is going to be 2 negatives. In this case, it will make it a positive. So what does that equal? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 8.3 on top, subtract. I'm going to make that a subtraction by the negative. So then I'm going to just do this by hand instead of a calculator. So basically that turns into a 13. You borrow as a 7, so 13 minus 5 is 8, 7 minus 2 is 5. So in this problem, I've got a negative 3 minus a negative 2 plus a negative 7 minus a negative 7. So let's take a look and see what happens. I'm going to stack these up. I've got a negative 3. These right here makes that a positive 2. Then I've got a negative 7 and that plus a negative 7. And then subtract 7, which also makes that a negative 7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, negative 3 plus 2. If you owe me 3 and you pay me back 2, that means you owe me 1. But then I also have, they both have negative signs, so if you owe me 7, you owe me a 14, so it's negative 14. Now combine the negative 1, negative 14, so if you owe me 1 and owe me 14, your answer is negative 15, because you're owing me 15. Another way I like to do this too is if I see a bunch of negative signs and subtraction signs, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say, okay, that's negative 3. Okay, 2 negatives right here, that's a positive 4, so plus 4. I'm not going to do anything with my minus 5, but then 2 negatives right here make that a positive 6. So I'm going to pair up my negative signs and my positive sign. So I've got a positive 6 and a 4, and I've got a negative 3 and a negative 5. So this gives me 6 plus 4 is 10, because I'm using this positive. Negative 3 and a negative 5 gives me a negative 8. So now I've got 10 minus 8, which gives me a positive 2. Next, we got an evaluate. That means all you're doing is plugging in your values for m and n and solving. So my m is -3. I'm subtracting n, which is a +4. So this is telling me -3 and a -4. So if you owe me 3 and owe me 4, that means you owe me 7, which would be a -7. Okay? Is x equals -3 a solution of x minus 2 equals -5? Well, what we're doing is we're taking this x is -3, and I'm saying -3 minus 2 equals -5. So if I write out -3 and a -2, well, my answer is going to be a negative, and you add those up to 5, because if you owe me 3 and owe me 2, you owe me 5. So this right here and this right here are the same, so I would say yes. Now, if this number right here that we plugged in, our -3, was anything different than a -5, it would be no. Okay, fractions. A -16, and now two negatives right here make a positive, or a plus 4/16. So I'm going to say, okay, 4 minus 1, because I've got a 4 and a -1 on the top gives me 3. So I know my answer is going to be 3 on my numerator, because that's what I'm adding up or subtracting. And then my denominator is what they have in common, which is 16. Finally, this is another plug in the values. So I'm going to say, okay, what... So I'm going to put in 9 minus what? 9 minus what? Well, x in this case is a -2. Now my y value is a 1, so I'm going to say 1 plus 5. Okay, these signs, subtract the negative gives you a positive. So that's going to be 9 plus 2 over 1 plus 5, which is 6. So finally, 9 plus 2 is an 11 over 6. Or if you put it in a mixed number, if it's asking you, that means 6 goes into 11 one time, with 5 remaining over whatever our denominator, in this case it's a 6. So this concludes my section 8.4, which is subtracting real numbers. Be looking out for my 8.5, which is multiplying and dividing real numbers. Thank you for listening.